Welcome back to A1 Storyteller, the home of gripping, powerful, and thought-provoking stories that will keep you hooked until the very last second. Imagine walking down the street minding your own business, when suddenly, out of nowhere, someone calls the police on you. Not because you did anything wrong, not because you were breaking the law, but simply because they didn't like the way you looked. Sounds outrageous, right? Well, for Jonathan Carter, this wasn't just some nightmare scenario, it was his reality. A black man standing outside a cafe, enjoying his coffee, when suddenly a self-righteous woman named Karen decided he didn't belong. But what Karen didn't know was that she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. Because Jonathan Carter wasn't just any black man, he was the new mayor of the very city she lived in. What happens when a Karen messes with the wrong person? How does her world crumble when she realizes she just made the biggest mistake of her life? Buckle up, because this story is about to take you on a wild ride, one filled with drama, justice, and the kind of sweet, satisfying payback you won't want to miss. And if you're new to A1 Storyteller, hit that subscribe button right now, because trust me, we've got plenty more stories that will leave you speechless. Now let's get into it. It was a bright Monday morning in the heart of Oak Ridge, a peaceful town with a diverse community. Newly elected mayor Jonathan Carter was out for a stroll, blending in with the city he was determined to improve. Dressed in a simple button-down shirt and dark slacks, he carried a coffee in one hand and his phone in the other, replying to emails before heading into his office. Across the street, Karen Whitmore, a woman notorious for her sharp tongue and entitled attitude, sat in her luxury SUV, scanning the area with narrowed eyes. She prided herself on being the self-proclaimed protector of the neighborhood, always on high alert for anyone she deemed suspicious. And today, her eyes locked onto Jonathan Carter. Karen's face twisted in disgust as she watched him type on his phone. He was standing outside a new cafe, waiting for a meeting with a local business owner, but in Karen's mind, he didn't belong. To her, a black man in this part of town must be up to something. She grabbed her phone and without hesitation dialed 911. "Yes? I'd like to report a suspicious man outside the new cafe on Main Street. He looks like he's scoping the place out. I think he might be up to no good." The dispatcher asked for a description, and Karen eagerly provided it. Within minutes, 2 police officers arrived, sirens blaring. Jonathan barely had time to process what was happening before the officers approached him, hands resting on their holsters. "Sir, we received a call about a suspicious individual matching your description. Can you provide identification?" one of the officers demanded. Jonathan raised an eyebrow, stunned. "Suspicious? I'm standing here waiting for a meeting. Who called you?" "That would be me," Karen called out smugly, stepping forward with her arms crossed. "I saw you loitering, and I know the kind of people who do that." Jonathan exhaled sharply. He had dealt with people like her before, but this time was different. This time he held the power. "Ma'am, I don't believe this is any of your concern," Jonathan said, maintaining his composure. Karen scoffed. "It absolutely is. This is a respectable neighborhood and we don't tolerate." Before she could finish, Jonathan pulled out his official mayoral ID and held it up. "Jonathan Carter, Mayor of Oak Ridge," he said coolly. Karen's mouth fell open. The officers stiffened, exchanging nervous glances. The moment Jonathan Carter revealed his identity, the air between them shifted dramatically. It was as if the ground beneath Karen's feet had crumbled. She had expected to watch the police haul this suspicious man away, not stand face to face with the most powerful figure in Oak Ridge. Karen's face turned several shades of red, and she let out a nervous chuckle. "Wait, you're saying you're the mayor?" Jonathan remained composed, his sharp gaze never leaving her. "That's exactly what I'm saying. The mayor of Oak Ridge. The very city you think I don't belong in." The 2 officers, realizing the gravity of the situation, immediately adjusted their stance. One of them cleared his throat and spoke cautiously. "Sir, we apologize for the misunderstanding. We were just responding to the call we received." Jonathan shifted his attention to them. "And what exactly was the nature of that call?" The officer hesitated. "We received a report of a suspicious individual loitering outside this cafe. The caller claimed he might be scoping out the area for criminal activity. Jonathan's jaw tightened. Let me get this straight. I, a man simply standing outside a cafe typing on my phone, am considered suspicious? But the actual problem? The person who made a false, racially motivated report gets to stand here without question? Karen, sensing the danger in his words, raised her hands defensively. Whoa, well, let's not turn this into something it's not. I was just looking out for the community. I saw you standing there acting all shifty, and I thought it was better to be safe than sorry. Jonathan let out a humorless chuckle. Safe? Safe from what exactly? A black man drinking coffee? Or was it the fact that I was simply existing in a space you think I don't belong in? Karen opened her mouth, but no words came out. For the first time, her usual confidence wavered. The cafe owner, a middle-aged woman named Rosa, had been watching the exchange from the doorway. Now she stepped forward, her expression furious. Mr. Mayor, I'm so sorry you had to go through this, she said, shaking her head in disgust. I saw the whole thing from inside. She was staring at you the entire time before she made that call. Jonathan nodded. That much was obvious. Karen scoffed, flipping her blonde hair over her shoulder. Oh, come on. So now I'm the bad guy just because I was being cautious? Jonathan took a slow step closer, his voice calm but authoritative. Cautious? No, you were being prejudiced. You didn't see a man standing here. You saw a black man and assumed the worst. You called the police knowing that these situations can escalate dangerously. You abused the system because of your bias. And now that you're being called out, you want to play the victim? Karen's face twisted in frustration. I didn't mean... Didn't mean what? Jonathan challenged. Didn't mean to get caught? Didn't mean to harass an innocent man? Or didn't mean to call the police on the mayor? The weight of his words settled over the crowd that had begun to gather. Several people had stopped to watch the confrontation unfold, and murmurs of disapproval spread through the small audience. One man in a business suit shook his head. This is embarrassing. I've seen that guy around. He's been here for years helping the community. And you, he pointed at Karen, you just made yourself look like an absolute fool. Karen's face went pale. She hadn't expected people to turn against her. She had always been the one people supported when she complained about the wrong kind of people being in the neighborhood. But now the tide was shifting. Jonathan pulled out his phone. I'm calling my office. This is going on record. False emergency reports based on racial profiling will not be tolerated in Oak Ridge anymore. Karen's eyes widened in panic. Wait, that's not necessary, is it? I mean, we can just let this go, right? Jonathan arched an eyebrow. Let it go? Like how you expected me to go when you called the police on me for no reason? Karen sputtered, searching for a way out. But it was too late. The tables had turned, and she was no longer in control. The entire incident had been captured on security cameras from the cafe, and within hours the footage began circulating online. Social media exploded with outrage. Racist Karen and Mayor Carter were trending nationally. People from all walks of life weighed in, condemning Karen's actions. The public was furious, not just because she had called the police on an innocent man, but because she had done so with such blatant racial bias. Karen, on the other hand, was completely unprepared for the fallout. She had always been the type to complain about those people without consequence. She had called the police on neighborhood kids for playing music too loudly, reported delivery drivers for lingering too long, and even accused a grocery store cashier of having an attitude, just because the young woman hadn't smiled at her the way she wanted. But this time she had picked the wrong target, and now the entire town was watching her downfall. News outlets picked up the story, airing headlines like, Oak Ridge Mayor targeted by racially biased 911 call. Karen strikes again, but this time she called 911 on the mayor. Oak Ridge in uproar over false police report incident. As the backlash grew, Karen's life started unraveling at an alarming speed. First, her job called. Karen worked as a real estate agent at one of Oak Ridge's top firms, and her boss, a no-nonsense woman named Victoria Langley, was not pleased to see her employee in the middle of a racial controversy. Karen, Victoria said over the phone, her tone icy. "We need to talk." Karen swallowed hard. "I know how this looks, but it looks like you embarrassed yourself, our firm and this entire community." Victoria cut in. "Do you have any idea how much damage you've done? We have clients threatening to pull their business from us because they don't want to be associated with a company that employs a racist." Karen gasped. "Racist? No, I'm not racist. I was just trying to—" "Save it," Victoria snapped. "You're officially on unpaid leave while we conduct an internal review, and if you're thinking about suing for wrongful termination, don't bother. We have a morals clause in your contract. If your actions bring negative attention to the company, we have every right to terminate you." The call ended abruptly, leaving Karen staring at her phone in shock. Her panic grew when she checked her email and saw messages from her neighborhood association. The HOA, which had once tolerated her complaints, was now distancing itself from her. "Due to recent events, we kindly ask that you refrain from using our Community Watch platform for personal grievances. We do not support racial bias in any form." Karen's jaw clenched. "This is ridiculous. I was just doing my duty as a good citizen." But deep down, she knew it was over. Meanwhile, Jonathan sat in his office, scrolling through the endless messages of support. People from across the country were sharing their own experiences with racial profiling, thanking him for speaking out. His assistant Marissa knocked on the door. "Mayor Carter, the press is outside. They're waiting for a statement." Jonathan nodded, setting down his phone. "Let's give them one." Minutes later, he stood at the podium, cameras flashing all around him. "What happened to me is something that happens to black men and women in this country every day," he said firmly. "Too often, innocent people are confronted by law enforcement because someone with bias calls 911, assuming the worst. That stops here. Oak Ridge will no longer tolerate these false reports. We will hold people accountable for wasting police resources and putting innocent lives in danger." The crowd erupted into applause, but Jonathan wasn't finished. "As of today, my office is working with the City Council to introduce a new ordinance. One that will impose serious consequences for those who weaponize 911 against innocent people based on race." The press conference made national news. People were calling it the Karen Accountability Bill. And Karen, she was about to face the full weight of its consequences. Karen had never felt so isolated in her life. Her social media was flooded with angry comments. Former friends were distancing themselves, and even her usual allies, the neighborhood busybodies who thrived on gossip, weren't returning her calls. The final straw came when she received a letter in the mail from City Hall. "Dear Ms. Whitmore, due to your recent actions involving a false emergency report, an official review has been opened regarding your conduct. If found guilty, you may be subject to fines, community service, or other legal consequences under the newly proposed ordinance." Karen's hands shook as she read the words. Legal consequences? A fine? Community service? This wasn't supposed to happen to her. Desperate, she drove to City Hall and barged into the front office. "I need to speak with the mayor," she demanded. "This is all a misunderstanding." The receptionist, a young woman who had clearly seen the news, didn't even blink. "The mayor is unavailable." Karen's lip curled in frustration. "Listen, I pay taxes. I have a right to—" Before she could finish, a deep voice interrupted her. "Karen?" She spun around to see Jonathan standing in the hallway, his arms crossed. His expression was unreadable, but there was no kindness in his eyes. "You?" She breathed. "You did this to me." Jonathan let out a slow exhale. "No, Karen, you did this to yourself." Karen's face twisted with desperation. "Come on, Mayor Carter. I've lived in this town for years. I didn't mean any harm." Jonathan raised an eyebrow. "Didn't mean harm? You called the police on an innocent man because of your assumptions? You wasted their time, you put me in danger, and now that there are consequences, now you care?" Karen's lower lip trembled. "Please, just make it go away. I'll apologize. I'll donate to charity. Just don't let them find me." Jonathan studied her for a moment before speaking. Karen, this was never just about me. This is about the people in this town who have had to deal with this for years. People who never got justice. If I let you off the hook, then what message does that send? Karen opened her mouth, but no words came out. Jonathan nodded at the receptionist. She can file an appeal through the proper channels, otherwise she'll have to deal with the consequences, just like everyone else. And with that, he walked away. Karen stood frozen, realizing for the first time in her life that there was no getting out of this. And that, my friends, is what you call karma at its finest. Karen thought she could call the police, ruin an innocent man's day, and walk away like nothing happened. But oh no, she had no idea she was about to go up against the most powerful man in the city. She lost her reputation, she lost her job, she lost the respect of everyone around her. And worst of all, she had to face the cold, hard truth. Her privilege couldn't save her this time. This story isn't just about one woman's downfall. It's about justice. It's about standing up against racial profiling and finally holding people accountable for their actions. So, what do you think? Did Karen get what she deserved? Should she have faced even harsher consequences? Drop a comment below and let's talk about it. And if you loved this story, you know what to do. Like, comment, and subscribe to One Storyteller, because we're bringing you more stories that will make you think, make you feel, and most importantly, make you come back for more. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, and always stand up for what's right.